Very well. So let's start. Welcome, Anna. It's really nice to have you on this webinar talking about the Nordics and specifically Sweden. We did prepare a bit together, so you know the first question, which is a fun fact about yourself. We need to have we like to have a light note when we start. So, what's your fun fact? I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I know. First, I'm very happy to be here. And secondly, this was probably one of the toughest questions I've had in a long time. But one fun fact that I actually even asked my mom, I was like, do you know anything fun about me? So she said that like from the age of 3, I pretty much was able to recite every single one of my favorite story, leading to me, of course, doing this for anyone who ever wanted to listen. So
So
I
yeah,
was
you were on
pretty
stage from very early on then.
hmm So from 3, with a very good memory for those tales. So
Okay, so I'll be careful about what I'm saying. 'Cause you'll probably remember everything I will say.
probably, and then, I'll hold it against you in 30 years' time.
Yeah, thank God we're not married for that then, because you would remember everything.
That
So
would be
anyway,
hard.
great fun fact. Maybe a bit more seriously, a short summary about what you do and what's your daily job in Sweden.
So my daily job in Sweden is looking a lot like this. I've been in the Amazon business since 2012, and not a lot of people have been in like the Amazon sphere in Sweden for that long. So I these days I do a lot of webinar, I do a lot of keynotes, and I also do strategic consulting on more of a like board and owner level. So that's pretty much
Great.
what I do. So it differs from day to day, but a lot of it involves talking to people about Amazon.
Cool. That's exactly what we're going to do. So my first question hearing about that is, when did you start to know that Amazon would move into Sweden? Was it like you saw it would always happen, or like when did you start to hear about it?
I mean, the rumors have been going on and off for about 4 years, maybe.
Hmm.
But this was actually the first year when I felt that, okay, this is the year when it will actually happen. But there's been a lot of talk about it, especially since Amazon purchased Amazon.se, because there was a lady in Stockholm who owned that one. And once they finally get hold of it, everyone was like, oh my dear, now they're finally coming. And then it still took another year or so.
COVID
And I mean,
probably.
they're not here yet, so we're still waiting.
Yeah, that was my second question. Do you have a date? Like
I
nobody's asking you that
No,
question.
no, I've
Obviously,
not
that's
had
a
that
very tricky one.
question. Yeah, no, I haven't heard that before. Not like a million times this year, at least. No, we still don't have an actual date. And according to my sources, they're late. It was supposed to happen earlier. But I mean, seeing how this year is evolving, like we spoke about earlier, it's 2020, so nothing's for certain. Still hoping that it might happen before the end of October or early November, because we're hoping a bit that they're going to want a stress test before the real holiday season.
Okay, so I'm hearing Anna and Orlando is saying that Amazon Sweden will be live on November 1st. Okay, cool. Thanks. That's a date. So we have a date.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
if you say November 1st, we still haven't added a year to that. So fine with that.
yeah, November 1st, I said. So yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. I didn't put a year. So hopefully that will start. But I presume it will start anyway before the end of the year because otherwise they would look a bit foolish. But typical of Amazon to get started without being 100% ready. But that's
yeah.
also being agile, I think, is doing
But
and testing at the same time.
the thing that worries me a bit is that when you look back end in Seller Central, the .se version is still looking very much unfinished. So we'll see.
It, it, I think what will probably happen is that the thing will be launched or Amazon.se will be launched, but a lot of the functionalities won't be live until sometime. So this we'll see. Now, diving a bit into what it means. So we've got two types of point of view. Let's say one is from the people inside Sweden, and the others is for all the others, like inside Europe, but also could be in the US or anywhere else in the world. So starting from the Swedish point of view, how do you see what's the main benefits or the main threats of having Amazon.se?
I mean, the main threat is like everywhere else. Amazon comes in and starts to dominate online traffic. Um, However, though, it's not like they have a first mover advantage on the Swedish online market. So I think the main benefit that Amazon will bring to the Swedish consumers is the everything store. You know, that you can pretty much purchase anything on the same platform, have it delivered for free within 1 or 2 days. Because that's something we don't really do marketplaces. But when it comes to, free and fast shipping or good prices and stuff, Swedish ecom is pretty well advanced. And I feel like you can see that in the way Amazon is approaching Sweden with the whole, automatic translations of listings that are active in Germany and the UK, and that you need to opt out, not for your products to be available in Sweden from the very beginning. I haven't seen that before. So you can kind of tell that Amazon is very well aware of the fact that, free and fast shipping is not something that the Swedish consumers, it's more of like a hygiene factor. We expect it to be like that.
Okay. So it's interesting because if you look at from the European perspective, it's like north of Europe is really into e-commerce, and you look at the south of Europe, in Spain, for example, in Italy, when Amazon started in Spain and Italy, the size of e-commerce was just minute. It's completely the other way around in northern Europe, where the e-commerce is very strong, but therefore probably for Amazon it's more difficult to be a complete revolution that they probably are used to be in other countries, right?
Exactly. That's at least my point of view. I feel like, they can't really compete in that many other areas than the fact that it's a marketplace. So obviously, having a lot of different products on offer from day one is going to be hugely important for them in Sweden.
So we can expect the first learning is we can expect that the battle for price will be quite heavy in Sweden compared to at least UK and Germany, where you can have higher prices to a certain extent because Amazon is so big in those markets.
I would say so, yeah. And you'd also, I mean, Amazon will have to change the behavior of Swedish consumers because we're so used to going more towards product segments. So, if you want any pharmacy goods, you go to an online pharmacist. And if you want to buy anything fashion related, you go to a place like Naked, or, baby stuff, you go to Jewelry Room. So we have a lot of really big actors in the different
Like
segments of the
category
yeah,
champions, you would say. Yeah,
exactly.
okay. And so the threats are clear in terms of benefits for the Swedish or let's say Nordic brands, maybe as a whole. Where are the main potential for them, or what are the main potential?
To get an easier way out of Sweden. Because we all know what it's like when Amazon enters a new market. It's slow in the very beginning. It's always good to be there from the beginning because first mover advantage is so strong. But still, it takes some time before they start to become, more dominating. Like, say, in Germany, for example, they've got 20 years. So they've had some time. So I would say for Swedish brands, the benefit is that they'll be able to learn a platform and then be able to pretty quickly scale it abroad. That would
Okay,
be, but not
so
really the Swedish market.
yeah, so actually the biggest potential, if I hear you well, is that it's mostly for the Swedish or Nordics brands to get their products thanks to the BAN-EU FBA system or whatever system, or through the Amazon platform to go into the rest of Europe.
I,
Uh,
I would say
Correct.
so, from my
Yeah.
perspective at least.
And do you believe that the Swedish slash Nordics companies have understood that or are seeing that as a potential, or they're still saying, okay, yeah, no, nothing special?
Some of them are seeing that potential, and I for sure try to educate people that this is possible. But I think in Sweden or in the Nordics, it's more about the threat that is Amazon for everyone. So everyone is focusing more on the fact that Amazon will come and, they'll be able to put a lot of pressure when it comes to pricing and stuff like that, because, they're not afraid to lose money when expanding internationally. So those fears are legit for sure. However, I feel like there should be a little bit more focus on the way this is easing the export for Swedish brands.
And so, yeah, for me, it's like a lot of people, when they are afraid, they go in defensive mode rather than go in offensive mode, saying, okay, they're coming, what should we do, rather than saying, okay, they're coming, how should I make what's my competitive advantage, or how I can focus to show customers, my existing customers, that I can offer them things that Amazon cannot. And talking of that, is like, could you give us a few names of what are the big, like, Nordic's e-commerce website? You said they're all very category specific. So does that mean there are really a lot, or is it like you've got 10 type of accounts which are covering the main part of the market?
I mean, there are a lot of them. Then you have a few big ones. I mean, CDON is a big marketplace, which is a bit unusual in Sweden. And then you have Apotea for pharmacy gear. You have places like Jolly Room for baby gear, or Babyland. So you can almost hear by the names of these web
Yeah, of
shops
course.
their focus areas, but they're big. And then you have Dustin. It's also big when it comes to, home electronics and those kind of categories.
Okay. And if you would say to a European brand, saying, okay, if you want to go into Sweden and the Nordics, is that like, should they go on Amazon only, or should they actually look at the other platforms? Is it easy to go on those platforms, or no, just test it out with Amazon for now? What would be your...
I mean, the easiest way would probably be to go with Amazon, seeing as we don't really have that many other platforms in Sweden right now.
Okay.
So if Amazon manages to win over the Swedish consumers, I think European brands who get on Amazon Sweden and do it well from the very beginning, they'll have a real competitive advantage. And also, I mean, being a seasoned Amazon seller, you'll have a total upside compared to a lot of Swedish businesses, because their Amazon knowledge isn't that great amongst
Yep.
most of them. Of course, you have exceptions to the
They
rule.
didn't have to worry about it before now. So yeah.
No, and they didn't take advantage of it either. So
And is on the general e-commerce landscape in Sweden, is it very much price driven, or not really? Like, between those different big category leaders?
I mean, of course, price is a big thing. I mean, we have the sites like Price Runner, where you compare prices all over. But I would say it's a bit based on the product category more. So go into electronics, for example, very price driven. Other things like fashion, for example, it's more about the whole brand experience. And people are willing to pay more for a great experience, which is also something that's going to be tricky for Amazon. Because for most Swedes, Amazons look like something from the 80s. And we're used to really beautifully designed web pages and a lot of omnichannel thinking and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And would you have any like recommendations for brands wanting to go into Sweden, into what is really important to talk in the sense of what they should present to their to, like, Swedish customers? What's very important in terms of...
We like to think of ourselves as very sustainability conscious.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one side I think you should bear in mind when looking at which products you want to launch in Sweden. And then also, of course, presenting everything in Swedish. I mean, English is perfectly fine in Sweden as well. Still, though, most Swedes prefer to shop in Swedish as well. Same thing as in Germany or France.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Don't
Yeah,
mention France. Yeah.
a bit worse perhaps
Yeah.
in
Well,
France and
much.
Germany than Sweden. I mean, of course, we're used to shopping in English as well, but if you really want to compete with the big Swedish actors, then you should definitely look at having everything in Swedish. And I'm seeing as Amazon is auto translating things, I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to expect as well. The auto
And
translations, though, do not, as always, do not trust the Amazon auto translations.
yeah, you've answered to my question. I kind of knew the answer, but I wanted to hear it from you. Do you have any examples of brands which were from Sweden going into Europe successfully, on Amazon, for example, or vice versa, European brands which came, I'm saying European, like non-Swedish brands coming into Sweden, which failed, for example, and was any learnings on both sides?
I'm not so sure about brands that have failed on the Swedish market, to be honest. However, we have a lot of Swedish brands going all over the world, really.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people know about Daniel Wellington, the watches, and all the old ones like Baby Björn,
Mhm.
Fjällräven, all of those. So there are a lot of big Swedish
They're very
brands that do well.
multinational. If
Yeah.
do you feel that there was a lot of smaller or medium-sized Swedish brands which have gone there, or an example of one which specifically succeeded and some learnings from that, or you think they're still far away from that?
Do you mean on Amazon?
Yeah, specifically on Amazon.
Not that many, to be honest. I can't really think of many smaller ones. I mean, Elodie Details with Baby Gear, I know they're doing well on Amazon, but otherwise, not that many Swedish
Yeah,
companies
so
that do well there. I mean, you have Nix, like healthy snacks, no sugar. They've built up a substantial presence on Amazon, but they've also built on the fact that they were bringing forward products that were unique and had a big demand. And of course, my mentee Sun Tribe, a startup company from the southern parts of Sweden, they're also doing really well on Amazon Germany.
yeah, maybe on that, because you're helping smaller companies expand and using also your knowledge on Amazon. What have you found has specifically worked well for Swedish companies, and what would you say in a nutshell really is a potential, how to, like, some a few insights of what makes them successful versus what the others, for example, specifically for Swedish companies?
I would say it all comes down to the products, really. So, if you have products that are generic or don't really have a competitive edge, doesn't really matter which market you you go into, it just won't work, particularly
Mhm.
not on Amazon. So a lot of focus on the brands, and also, I mean, some Swedish brands that are successful, they do focus on sustainability, which, at least in my experience, is really appreciated in Germany, for example. And you tend to be able to keep up a higher price point if you go in that direction and
Yeah,
offering
it's having
something
a story to
unique.
say, right?
Yeah.
Storytelling is, we're in a world of storytelling. So if you have a story of sustainability, it's a powerful one, that's for sure. So that's we
Yeah, but it
seen
also
that.
needs to be closely connected to the actual product, I'd say. So, say in the example of Sun Tribe, I mean, they were doing an all natural sunscreen, and there really wasn't that much in the market, which was surprising for me as
Mm.
well, like in Germany. And then it was pretty easy for them to rank highly on Eco Sonnencreme and stuff like that, because, yeah, people were searching for it, but they didn't have that many options. So I think, like, of course, telling a story, but also actually making sure that it's a sought after product.
Yeah, it's like telling a story which is full of air is probably not the best option. I agree.
Nah.
If we'll agree with that. Talking about the Swedish customers, what do you think will be the main benefits for them, end of the day? Uh,
I mean, the convenience that is Amazon. Just the fact, you're able to get on Amazon, click whatever, whether you need toilet paper or you need a new pair of running shoes, or, you need something else for the kitchen, I don't know, and that you're able to get it all in one place, have it delivered the next day instead of having to look in different places. So, but it will need a change of behavior. So I think Amazon is they'll probably have a bit of a slow start in Sweden. But I mean, as we all know, they tend to win in the long run.
Yeah, and it's true that as we see it in the Netherlands, where they've started, they're having a very slow start
Yeah.
because of other players being there, Build.com and others, which will probably be exactly the same in Sweden to get people to change their habits of purchasing. Do you hear already a lot in the radio Amazon advertising yet, or not at all?
No, not at
Okay,
all.
so they're not.
So my idea, at least, is that it's going to look a bit like what it did in Australia. So when they launched in Australia, it was pretty quiet, and I spent a lot of time trying to build up the infrastructure, trying to get FBA and Prime sorted, and then year two, they just started, increasing marketing efforts hugely and driving way more traffic.
Mm. which they will probably invest massively into generating traffic. That's for sure. And
Mm.
one thing I was very surprised to hear, because I didn't know, is that they've built a warehouse already in Sweden, which is ready to operate.
Yeah, which is I find really interesting because I mean, I dare say we were a lot of people who imagined they'd start off by shipping from, I mean, Germany and Poland, which, you know, they're already shipping stuff to Swedish consumers from. So having them open up a warehouse in the middle of Sweden is an unusual move for Amazon when they do enter into a new market, because that usually comes a bit later.
Well, the Netherlands don't have any warehouses up to now.
No.
Well, Germany's
Well,
very, very close,
yeah, I was
but
just
it's
about to say, I mean,
that.
geography there. But looking at Australia, for example, I mean, they didn't open up FBA straight away. That took at least, I think, 4 months or something. So, but in Sweden, they've said they'll open up FBA straight away, and they'll also allow like local players in Sweden to ship their goods to the Swedish warehouse. And the Swedish warehouse is tiny, like it's 15,000 square meters, which is tiny in an Amazon sense. So if they are either not expecting a lot of Swedish businesses to come on Amazon straight away, or the whole place will be flooded and they'll have nowhere to put their own goods.
Or they will have a backup in Poland or things like that, which
Yeah, for
they're
sure. I mean,
doing already in Germany.
yeah, and also other sellers that are not registered in Sweden, they'll be shipping from Germany, for example, and but paying local fulfillment fees.
Yeah, and but that so one learning from that is that any one wanting to sell in Sweden and using FBA will have to have a VAT number straight away, a Swedish VAT number, because
Mm, no,
if they
that's
store
not
the
my take.
goods.
Not
No.
my take on it. Oh, I mean, because it's only Swedish registered businesses that will be allowed to use the Swedish warehouse. So it's actually
Okay.
even easier for international businesses that are already VAT registered in Germany, because they'll be able to use EFN but pay local fulfillment fees for Amazon fulfilling their orders to Sweden.
Okay.
So
So
they're sort of
okay.
lowering the barrier of getting into Sweden.
Yeah, okay. So I had misunderstood. So this warehouse is only for local sellers. So that means Swedish sellers, and all the European or American or anywhere else in the world would use the ones in Poland or Germany to fulfill into Sweden. You have still the rule of the VAT threshold.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, for sure.
I don't. Do you know what's the threshold in Sweden? Or that's a good question.
I would guess
Trapped
it's
you there. It's like.
yeah, I don't know because I've never sold in that direction.
Yeah, indeed,
But
indeed.
probably around 100k euros or something.
Yeah,
That's a wild
that's a
guess, so
one in
please don't quote me.
it's a one in Germany. I don't know. It's probably a bit less. So we will have a fact
Yeah,
check. Maybe some people in the background can do a fact check and let us know. But yeah, presumably in this area. One question is, what's the VAT rate in Sweden?
oh, it's sorry, it's a lot less. It's like 32,000 euros
Okay,
or
so
something. Yeah,
so
so it's a
good
lot
point.
less.
Yeah, 32,000, which
I think
depending
so.
on your price points and what you can do, it could be easily achieved to do more than 30,000 a year. So you
Yeah,
probably need to have a look at having a VAT number in Sweden if your business is substantial.
yeah, but
Um,
a good thing there is like everything is online. It's in English, super easy. It's not Italy where you have to do it all in Italian. So I would say I wouldn't sweat too much about being VAT registered in Sweden, because the
okay,
Swedish tax agency is actually one of the most appreciated government agencies in Sweden, which is super weird because, you know, they do tend
yeah,
to take people's money, but it's really easy to
VAT
deal
and
with them.
appreciated doesn't sound very
No, no,
they
it
don't sound like they
doesn't.
could add, but okay,
They're really trying
okay.
to simplify things. So it should be
Okay.
really easy. So I think like if you're used to dealing with the Italian VAT system or even sales tax in the US, for example, Swedish VAT will be a treat.
Okay. Well, that's a learning that the Swedish VAT will be a treat. What's a VAT like?
25% though.
25%, right?
Mhm.
So it's like I had a doubt. So in terms of price comparison with Germany or any other country, you still have 5% more VAT than the other countries. So
Yeah.
when you will be doing a price comparison, your prices won't go so low, because at least you've got 5% of VAT on top, specifically for the higher price points. Great. Looking at my different question. What would you say would be the size of the e-commerce in Sweden today, in total of commerce? Is that something you know? Another tricky
Yeah,
question.
yeah, no, I saw 87 billion Swedish kronor during 2019.
And that, in terms of percentage, do you have an idea? Would you say it's 50, 20? Is it
Oh,
like,
I actually would dare to say that. No, I
okay,
don't have that figure.
that's very smart.
Yeah.
Uh, no, cool. It's
Because
just
my guess
because
didn't go that well when we just did that exercise, so I just won't guess.
no, it's good. It's the my point was to say is how much, like, if you're looking at to a market and looking
Mm,
at, okay, if I want to, how substantial is the e-commerce part, is because, for example, you could say in Germany in some categories you could be 35 to 40%. And then if you say, okay, I can achieve probably 30% of the Amazon revenue, which is already enormous, for example, of 30% of the business. So you have an idea
yeah.
of where you are of the total business and what's your potential. Because indeed, as a brand, it's easier to go on Amazon than to try to be in multiple retailers, e-tailers, and so on. So it's this kind of thing. But
Yeah. I mean, what I
we'll
can
dig
say,
into that, and we'll.
yeah, and also, I mean, the e-commerce shopping in Sweden grew with 49% during the second quarter this year, thanks to Corona, of course. But I mean, as in comparison, in the US, I think it grew by 44%. So
Okay.
we have a high rate there, and I think like the forecast for the entire year is like 33%.
Okay.
The pretty substantial growth.
That's quite big.
But
And
it's a
if you're
small
saying
country,
already, yeah, it's small but rich. How many people do you have in Sweden?
close to 10 million.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and my final question before we go into the question Q&A mode is: do you have any insights, or have you heard about any rumors of Amazon going into the other Nordics countries? And if so, would you feel that it would go first in Denmark or Norway or Finland, or not at all?
I mean, what I heard from a webinar I attended with Amazon the other week was that they're looking into being able to provide a solution for the Nordics, but it did not sound as it was in the pipeline anytime soon.
Okay.
So not sure. And also they said that, I mean, the Danish consumers or Norwegian consumers will still be able to use Amazon.se, but it will be similar to what Swedes have now when we use Amazon.de.
Okay. It's our rumors we've heard, or my guess is that
Mm.
probably Poland and Czech Republic will be the next ones in terms of countries.
Yeah.
And perhaps they will training like Nordics to see if it goes do some cross borders in other countries.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I've also heard
it,
Poland and rumors for that being launched fairly soon. What's your take on
well,
that?
I've like they have all the infrastructure, like the
Mm.
warehouses are here, everything is ready. So it would be in terms of logistics very easy to start. Nobody's committing, and probably that's a very well hidden secret inside.
Mm.
I think COVID has changed a lot of things into their schedule probably. But yeah, my take would be like potentially Q1, Q2 next year we could have Poland and Czech Republic probably together, because Czech Republic has got already also
Mm.
warehouses like the German warehouses. So like a lot of people have got already VAT registered in those countries if you're doing pan EU. So
Yeah.
it makes it very easy to go into it. So there is a confirmation from one of our friends here saying that yeah, the threshold for VAT is 320 Swedish crowns, which is 31.4 thousand euro,
Yeah.
so 31,400 euros per year. So indeed, if your brand is quite substantial, you might have to look into it depending on how Amazon gross will start. So Now we open up with the Q&A session. So anyone having a question, please drop it in the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to answer it. If we go back a bit to what you were saying, and for the people to have time to drop in the questions, is you're saying, okay, for a brand who's, let's say I'm in the UK, or I'm in mainland Europe, Germany, I want to go into Sweden. So as usual, it's like the quality of your product, all that, the typical things, but then like it's translating your content in good Swedish with local people, well, like native Swedish
Yeah.
speakers, I would say. So like it's the same for every country. Making a trend, does that make sense to say, okay, try to be very in the way you present yourself, like towards, you were saying about healthy products, or about environment sensitive, or is it something you would really say, okay, yeah, try to change a bit the way you're presenting yourself, or would it sound a bit too phony or too over the top? What would be like a normal brand which has done like normal marketing on their products? Do you think they should adapt their message to the Nordics, or not really?
I mean, it depends. I think Swedish consumers are pretty good at spotting greenwashing. So, if you try to appear to be sustainable, but you're not, then I'd say rather stay away from it and try and be more honest. But if you do have a chance to, take a more sustainable approach towards your product development, I see no reason why you wouldn't want to highlight that in Sweden. And then, of course, don't be American in the way you use, your calls to action or in your presentation and stuff. That does not work in Sweden.
Good learning point
Yeah.
to our American friends. We have a question here: is what will Prime be available from the start in Sweden? And if not, how will it impact businesses listing on Amazon.se?
My intel is coming from Amazon, and they've said that no Prime will not be available at launch in Sweden. They did not say a specific timeline for when it would arrive, but they said that they would be working hard to bring it onto the Swedish market, but it won't be available from the very beginning. And this, of course, means that Amazon will be a tad bit less attractive as well for Swedish consumers from the very beginning.
Yeah, and it goes really to your point of saying probably this Amazon Sweden adventure, at least for the very beginning, is a biggest potential for Swedish brands rather than like other brands in the world, in Europe or in the world, or even the Swedish customers, right?
Yeah, but also, I mean, I'm a very big fan of being an early adapter and the first mover, and also remembering that in Sweden, reviews won't be synced from the other countries, and we will have no ads from the very beginning. So, I mean, it's really back to basics when it comes to how to approach your Amazon listing and your sales and your strategies for bringing people onto your product listing and getting the reviews. So I would say, yes, it will be slow in the beginning and you won't get like an instant payout for your work, but I definitely try and not be late.
Yeah, and it reminds me really of, and it's still a bit the case in the south of Europe, like Italy and Spain, where the size of the markets were a bit smaller. But we always said, and it's still a bit the case about, yeah, be the first ones, because there was a study which was given by Amalyze in Germany, was saying with that the top 100 products in the US, like the 95% was always the same, like it
Mm.
was the same a long time ago, and like it's only 5% changes every year, because the
Yeah.
longer you're here, the more chances you are to be successful. So to your point, is that it makes sense to be the early beginner, because then but you need to have a SKU which stays the same. So
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you have
you can't have
like,
something that's bound to, seasonality or to another main product or something. So no cell phone cases perhaps for the, iPhone
yeah,
7.
and yeah, so it does. So you would say, okay, short term, it makes a lot of sense. Like the short term potential is really for the Swedish or Nordics brands. but long term, it will be a big win for brands, specifically if they moved earlier, and probably for the Swedish customers, as all the services of Amazon will kick in.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Thanks, I've learned something. I've got
Wow,
it.
it only took me about 40 minutes to get you to learn something. I don't know if that says more about you or me.
Okay, I'm not sure I would respond to that.
Let's just leave it. Smile and wave. Next question.
Next question. Do you believe when Prime is finally made available on Amazon.se, Danish and potentially Norwegian residents will have access to Prime benefits?
I would guess that won't happen instantly because I think they'll want to see how it works out in Sweden to begin with. But as they've mentioned that they would like to have some sort of like Nordics offering, that may be one approach that they have. I haven't heard anything about it, and I doubt that's what's going to happen first.
Okay, they didn't mention anything about the Nordics really as a whole, and focusing mostly on Sweden, right?
Yeah, mostly focusing on Sweden. However, these were things that Amazon personnel said that they would love to be able to have, like a Nordics offering, etc. But nothing, typical Amazon. No, kind of no answers really.
Yeah. I would love to, but
I would love to, but I won't give you a straight answer.
Great. Second, another question is regarding the fashion industry. Would Amazon.se be a good platform to list fashion items, or are there bigger/better platforms to do so?
Yeah, I mean, you don't really have bigger platforms unless you're with Zalando or something like that, because Zalando is also popular in Sweden. But then you have big brands like Naked and Boost and stuff like that that have a lot of fashion. So I think, seeing as Swedish consumers are pretty spoiled when it comes to fashion and the experience and everything, I mean, Amazon has a hard time with fashion everywhere because the platform isn't, developed for fashion brands yet. Working on it, particularly in the US.
I think Jeff Bezos has invested now in. I saw in the news that he was on pictures with Vogue or with like in the fashion. He's investing.
Oscar de la Renta and stuff like that. I mean, there are a lot of initiatives, especially in the luxury fashion brands. But I would say, like, seeing fashion as a category in Sweden, probably be socks and underwear and all of those basics to begin with. No, I really like anywhere else.
You put fashion wherever you want, Anna. I don't judge it.
Forgot I was talking to someone French. No, but really, no. But looking at the fashion category, that's probably what was going to happen. People wouldn't go in there and be like, "Oh, I'll buy the next, autumn 2021 collection off Amazon." I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm happy for Jeff to prove me wrong.
Yeah, well, we'll see what he's got up his sleeves. Talking about categories, do you think which would be the first or the main categories you would see be successful in Sweden on Amazon? Do you feel there's some sweet spots, or difficult to say?
I would say electronics. I mean, it's natural, because that's where people go out and they do price comparisons, and that's where Amazon is going to try really hard to have the big brands and be able to, get out the best prices as well. So that's my take on it, at least.
Okay. Another one is, which tactics is best? Launch only a few products or your whole product range?
This is classic. Well, I usually say it's best to do your homework beforehand and see which products are worth focusing on. However, a lot of people have the strategy to launch their entire product catalog with 10,000 SKUs and just see whatever sells. The big problem is that you don't really see what sells unless you do the hard work. So I don't know. The tactic I prefer is looking at your product assortment, seeing if there are any tweaks you can do to make them fit better into the Amazon environment, and go for a manageable amount of products. But, Jerome, you might be on the other side here. It differs from case to case.
I would agree with you. For me, is what's most important is the customer experience and is how you will have specific content in Swedish. So it's down to your budget because it has a cost to translate, and the more you translate, not cheaper. It doesn't get really cheaper because the time is always more or less the same. So it's how much budget you have to have really good content for your product. So if you don't have like a lot of money, I would focus on doing the bulk, like your 2080, or even the 2080 of your 2080, depends on your
Yeah.
budget, and then do that content perfect, and then add it step by step. Because it, like Anna said, it doesn't make sense to have 10,000 products and like it's in English or bad English, and nobody wants to buy it because it doesn't sound good. So that that would be my. So you see, we do agree.
Yeah, or something.
Yeah. Um, so if and vice versa, do you see there is a sweet spot of like Swedish type of Swedish brands which can really do well on Amazon in Europe, or not specifically here again?
I think there are a lot of Swedish brands who do better outside of Europe because a
Okay.
lot of people focus on the really saturated markets, and I'm more of a Amazon Japan kind of gal.
I see.
I like the newer markets that have great potential because going into Europe, well, to be frank, you're already late.
But
And
Japan
being
is bigger. Is I think it's nearly the size of the UK, right? So it's quite big and
it is,
still quite big.
but you also get rid of a lot of the lazy English speaking competition that can't be bothered going into a market that, does have a lot of weird symbols,
Indeed,
which
indeed.
is great. So, I mean, always looking at a language where, that's not English is preferable when looking at new markets and also their potential. So that's why I'd rather go to Japan than, say, for example, the UK.
Okay, interesting. That so
You're allowed to
maybe
disagree.
no. I think there's a lot of potential everywhere. Depending on your product, it will make more or less sense. There's
Yeah.
a level of complexity to ship your products to Japan. It's not Amazon makes it easier than if you're doing it yourself, but it's a question then maybe getting to learn it in Europe and then expand to Japan to get a better idea. Obviously, we help brands expand to Japan, so we're happy to help in any case. But yeah, good. I like the out of the box thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I
Another.
did. I went and ventured into Japan by myself with the help of a Japanese girl who was living in Gothenburg, and she, made the translations and looked after the customers. But I was in charge of sales and the whole customs agent stuff, and didn't speak a word of Japanese. But this was back in 2014 as well, so things weren't as developed. But it was really, yeah, it's a good experience.
I'm impressed.
Well, thank you. That only took me like 45 minutes to get
Yeah,
to.
it's 45. Yeah. Uh, yeah, very good. I have another question. I'm sorry. I can't reply to that. Will the bigger e-commerce platforms as Apotea, Lyko, etc., be a direct competitor to Amazon, or will they integrate? To be honest, I don't know about Apotea and Lyko. Do you know?
Two really big e-commerce players in Sweden. So
Okay,
pharmacy
shame on
goods
me.
and
Shame on me.
yeah, and beauty products, cosmetics, and hairstyle products. They'll be direct competitors, I'd say. They might bring some of their own private label brands onto Amazon. That's probably what I would do. But otherwise, I think they'll pretty much compete head to head with Amazon.
Hmm. Yeah, it will be interesting to see how the other platforms react. Will they use Amazon as another fulfillment platform or not?
Yeah, and I
That's
mean, it's really interesting. Like, if you look at CDON, which is pretty much the one big marketplace we do have in Sweden these days, if you don't count stuff like Wish, which isn't that trendy anymore, or Fyndiq, and they have taken the approach where they are the seller's best friend.
okay.
So they do the whole we look after the seller. We want you guys to succeed. We're not going to develop own private label goods to come directly compete with you. And you can kind of see their storytelling part in having Amazon entered the market.
Yeah, it will be an interesting thing because clearly Amazon doesn't really care about its sellers or its brands. Really not. It's and not because they want not to care. It's just because they're so focused on the end consumers. And end of the day, we can disagree or agree with what they're doing, but end of the day, they're very successful because the end consumers are really liking it.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to compare with CDON when they are face to face, see if like taking care of your sellers and less about your consumers is a good successful route. On the paper, it sounds a bit complicated for me, but
Yeah, I think like what they're trying to build on is that they have two customers instead of one. So, sellers one and customer one. See if we can combine their interests. But I mean, Amazon has become so much better in the last year or years than they were before when it comes to treating third-party sellers better.
yeah,
But from
true.
a
There's
really,
a lot
really
of
low level, though.
True, you're right. It's like specifically moving a lot of services which were for vendors only, which were
Yeah.
being made available to sellers. You're right. In general, the level of like access to Boo's brand registry was a lot of things that have been improved for third-party sellers. That's for sure, and specifically third-party sellers which are brand owners. So,
Yeah.
like we could say two Ps. That is improved, but however, there's they've increased like all in the health category, for example, in all through the COVID situation, they were completely flooded with like masks and things, and all the other brands in that categories were like we've had incredible issues on that category, which are totally unreasonable. Like having a product in one, like a single product which is allowed to be sold, and when it's in twos, they say no, it's a medical product, we can't sell it. So and say no, it's actually a double of this one. So just have a look, but nobody's having a look. So it's
Yeah.
true that. And this element of complexity will probably grow because Amazon is looking at scaling and automating a lot of processes, and that's where the automation sometimes doesn't work very well.
Sometimes.
Yeah,
It
sometimes.
sometimes works, I'd say.
Yeah, that's the other way around. What's interesting for if we come back to Sweden specifically and Amazon Sweden is that you have teams dedicated on Amazon in Sweden, but also in Luxembourg, and we've been in touch with a few of them, which are really dedicated to help brands grow in the Netherlands first today and also in Sweden, and they help a lot because like already in the Netherlands we've seen a lot of issues like
Yeah.
Prime badges is being lost or things like that, and it's really technical things, and those people can help solve a lot of issues. I don't know if you've met people. Is there already a big team in Sweden, a marketplace team or
No,
retail
I mean,
team?
a lot of the ones I've seen are based in Luxembourg that are
Okay.
responsible for the launch in Sweden and for assisting Swedish sellers or Swedish want to be Amazon sellers at least. But I mean, a lot of Swedish brands and Swedish businesses have a really hard time with the registration process, especially if you have our letters that are, A with two dots, A with a circle, O with two dots, and the
Yeah,
whole.
why would you do that?
Well, I don't know, but the automation system for Amazon does not approve. So I always have to tell people, I was like, make sure you have everything, double check that everything is correct and that the address is the same everywhere and no translations by yourself. And then, yeah, if you have a name with those letters in it, just don't try it. Just send someone else's paper or something, like, because that is going to be an issue. Hopefully, things will work out more smoothly soon, but it's still tricky. A lot of people have issues with the registration, even on the Swedish side, because I mean, they've opened up South Central Sweden for that.
And do you have a team of people inside Amazon in Sweden or in Luxembourg helping Swedish customers go into Europe? Because we've met people helping like other customers like European or whatever going into Sweden, but did you find teams which were on the other side or not really?
No, well, I know that those brands that have been approached by Amazon, there's been a lot of Amazon approaching brands during this year, and there the deal has been, we'll help you set up your European account. So not Sweden specifically, but get you on board with selling in Europe. So
Okay.
that's, similar.
Melissa, okay. I've got a question. How big market share is Amazon gonna have in 1, 3, and 5 years, do you think?
Ooh, tough one. 1 year, maybe I would say 5%, maybe 3 years.
Hey, that's November 2021.
Yeah, but they're already selling in Sweden, so we already
Yeah.
have a bit of a
Uh,
market share there. But then say 3 years, 10%, 5 years, 15 to 20
okay. So
of the e-commerce side of things.
e-commerce, which is a slow. So you really see Amazon struggling against the other players. Uh,
Yeah, I think it will be fairly slow. I might be completely wrong here. It might turn out that the Swedish consumers absolutely love everything about Amazon, but they do have they're not bringing anything that's really unique to the market, which is a problem. And they'll need to change how people shop. So that's changing behaviors. Even if Amazon is good at it, a lot of Swedish consumers are still gonna be Googling products and not looking for products on Amazon directly. So often it takes a bit of time to just change that.
Oh, you know, in most countries now, Amazon is the first. Like people go on Amazon before
Yeah,
going on Google, or anyway, if they look
it's
on
like
Google, Amazon is the
60%.
first. Yeah, the Amazon is the first answer
Mm.
anyway. So in terms of branding, and specifically like in a country like in France, where Amazon is like the market is very big in e-commerce, but there are so many competitors that Amazon is not as big as the others, and they've been investing a lot. Still, the number of people going onto the Amazon website to compare prices is by far the biggest. So in terms of brand awareness, this is really a place you want to be and make sure your products are looking good because people are checking on it. So maybe that will be also like a brand awareness tool before it becomes a very big sales tool in Sweden.
Yeah, but that's also about changing the behavior of Swedish consumers. And players like Price Runner and stuff, or they're gonna have a tough time if the Swedish consumers start getting onto Amazon to check things out. But I guess we'll see what we saw in Netherlands, like an initial spike in traffic because of the interest during the first month of the launch, then a bit slower month two, and unless we have another COVID situation, it might just start climbing slowly, because I know the Netherlands had another spike in May, but all over the world was a spike in e-com in May, pretty much. So
Hmm. And
we'll see.
we're coming up at the end of this very nice hour. Thank you very much for that, Anna, taking care of me for that hour. And maybe do you have like 3 points as a summary that people could go away with on what we've discussed about?
Yeah. Get started directly, but don't expect it to pay off straight away. If you have a sustainable brand, try and really push on that for the Swedish market. And don't forget that the VAT, the distance selling threshold is 32,000 euros, and you'll need to get registered fairly quickly.
Well done. That was beautifully put. I would like, and my 3 points are similar. It's like really the it's a great potential for the Nordics brands, and they have a big potential. Maybe they see it as a threat, but actually they could be coming into the rest of Europe and Japan or the US. Is probably for them an opportunity. Is the fact that the long-term potential is here, and especially if you move fast for people to go into Sweden and go slowly and just invest step by step. And I don't see a third point, but you've given it. So it's really interesting. I've got a last minute question. Do you think many e-commerce company in Sweden is going to bankruptcy when Amazon is coming? That's so that's a positive thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Don't want this quoted in the big news outlets in Sweden, but the ones that don't know their customers and that don't adapt to this new landscape that Amazon is going to bring, for sure, they won't survive. But the ones that, really care about their customers, see what they can offer their customers that Amazon cannot, and there is a lot of things Amazon cannot offer customers these days, they will, of course, thrive also in the future. It's all about, looking after the customers the best way.
I think your answer of saying 15% in 5 years mean that they won't kill a lot of people if they're only 15%. Probably it's a like I always try to say, okay, look at the opportunity rather than threat. It's an opportunity to people to reinvent themselves, and indeed, if they do, they have a chance. If they don't, like that's the nature of business, probably. So
yeah, it's a bit like retail versus e-com.
exactly,
Physical
the usual.
stores versus e-commerce. Some physical stores are still thriving, COVID aside, and it's the ones that are, filling the customer's needs. So it's all about focusing on the customer.
We'll agree on that, and that will be the final words. Thank you, Jonas. Carolina's just sent a side note. I think for some brands, it might be a good and an easy entry into Amazon, into Sweden market. At least for fashion brands, I believe in Amazon fashion. So thank you very much, Carolina, for that.
They're focusing hard on it for sure.
Yeah, and like 1 minute. And do you think that all major big Swedish brand will go live on Amazon.se from the very beginning?
Definitely not.
That was very short, and that's probably potential for those. Yeah, that's a good potential for the ones which will want to go there. And why not?
Because a lot of them are a bit skeptical towards Amazon and what Amazon will bring, and a lot of them have a substantial e-commerce presence already and don't want to compete with themselves or any retailers that they have. So not everyone is going to be there from the time of the launch. I think we'll see more European players on Amazon.se from the launch.
And typically bigger brands typically take a bit of time. So it's a good opportunity for those who are agile. Thank you, everyone. We'll be happy to take questions on LinkedIn or anywhere. Maybe I'll copy your profile from LinkedIn in the chat box if anyone wants to connect with you, Anna.
Super.
There you go. I'll put it to everyone. And if you want to reach out to Anna, feel free to. And thank you very much, everyone. This is the end of this webinar. Anna, it was a great pleasure.
Thank you very much, Hiram. I had a lot of fun.
I can see that. Take care.
You too. Speak to you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.